Hi guys, I am really excited to share this collaboration with you guys, and Yhara doesn't know that I'm opening with this, but I just wanted to say that this video has been something that we've been working on collaborating on for a long time, and after many delays, a lot of them on my part because I'm terrible at planning, it came together and I am so glad it did. Yhara is an amazing video essayist. She is the future of so many things. I even though she's younger than me, I look up to her in so many ways. Her content is so fun and well thoughtful, and she goes into this deep dive of nerdy pop culture and just all of these layers to it that continue to inspire me, continue to make me feel like I can do the same thing with my own niche weird things. And I think in many ways this discussion of Gabrielle Union is a unity of two of our loves, all solidified in one really amazing Black talent, and I am so grateful for this collaboration. I hope you guys enjoy it, and while we're gonna go into a quick ad break, and so yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for watching, thank you guys for the support, and I cannot wait for you to enjoy this video. And yeah, Yhara's the best. The sponsor for today's video is Bright Cellars. I am so excited about this because I love wine, but it has never been something that I've really been knowledgeable about until recently. There really is a bisexual to wine drinker pipeline, so look out for that, baby gays. And I've always been interested in Bright Cellar ever since I heard about it from Tiffany Ferg, and that's why I was really excited and flattered to get this partnership and sponsorship. Bright Cellars is a monthly wine membership that uses a 7-question quiz to match you wine based on your taste. And the quiz uses a kind of like magical taste algorithm that analyzes your taste profile and suggests you wines that you are guaranteed to like, and I can assure you that I did. And my favorite part is actually that they send you little education cards which help you not only know which ones you like and like how to break it down and talk about it like a little wine snob, but you know, you figure out what they are, you can find them, they're very unique. Like I tried to actually look up a few of them afterwards and I couldn't find it. I personally love dry Rieslings or sweet dessert wines, those really speak to me. When it comes to res, they tend to make me sleepy, so I kind of like something with like an earthier dirt taste. And my friend who hung out with me is a huge wino, and we unboxed the 6 bottles of wine together and we drank them while we were watching Succession, and we agreed that our top 3 were the following. Forever Fleeting. It is a 2020 California Muscat. I had it while we started watching Succession, like I said before, and I would say of the 3, this is a very Greg wine. The Cabin 5 was the red. It's a 2016 Zinfandel. It's a medium-bodied red. This is definitely the Shiv. Finally, we have Watchkeeper, and it's a Sauvignon Blanc 2020. It's fresh and fruity like Roman. It feels like everything that you would drink in a detox smoothie, but it's a wine. And I drank it so happily. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is what Roman would drink on his, like, I'm trying to like be healthy day. It feels like a really good, it's a really great light-bodied wine. It feels like an unwinding wine. It just relaxed me. It's everything I want from a white wine. Bright Cellars is an excellent way of finding the perfect little wine for every occasion this holiday season. Bright Cellars is giving my followers 50% off their first 6-bottle box. That is 6 bottles for $45. And listen, I buy wine. That is an insane amount of value. And by using the link, you are not only supporting my channel, which thank you, I love you, and yes, I do need the support because it's depression season, but you are also getting a great deal on wine, which, you know, I want to make sure you guys are getting things that I would actually enjoy using. So follow the link, brightcellars.com/Melina Pendulum, and take the quiz, get started, get yourself a nice $50 box of amazing wine, and let me know which ones you enjoyed and which characters from Succession your wine tastes like.
When they confront race and gender stereotypes, Black women are standing in a crooked room. and they have to figure out which way is up. Bombarded with warped images of their humanity, some Black women tilt and bend themselves to fit the distortion. No actor was as present and as underappreciated in the teen movie scene of the 90s and the 2000s as Gabrielle Union, or as I like to call her, Gab the GOAT. Appearing on numerous iconic films and TV shows like Moesha, She's All That, and 10 Things I Hate About You, she was as important to these films as any of the lead characters. The roles she played in teen movies and romantic comedies in particular were significant because during this era, segregation was an accepted norm. When we think of segregation today, more often than not, we think of Black patrons being forced to enter theaters from the back, and we think of whites-only drinking fountains. We also think that type of segregation mostly ended in 1968 following the assassination of Martin Luther King and LBJ's passing of the Civil Rights Act. However, if we have learned anything from history, it is that it always repeats itself, and if we have learned anything about racism, it is that it is basically Michael Myers. The motherfucker just won't die. Though the entertainment climate of the 1990s was a great improvement from the days of production codes prohibiting interracial relationships and Hollywood frequently sidelining actors of color, that didn't mean there was an entire absence of discrimination or that racial stereotypes were no longer perpetuated. Even when Hollywood attempted to tell stories that humanized Black characters, they managed to do so while centering whiteness. Films like Dangerous Minds were nothing more than an extension of the white savior narrative, suggesting that what Black and brown kids really need is a gracious white person to mold them into respectable people. In the 90s and for much of the 2000s, the Black teen film was typically a drama about living in the projects or attending school in the inner city, having to escape gangs and violence in the drug game. It was the kind of film that, although necessary, could feel very exploitative in the wrong hands. A lot of these films were a direct response to Do the Right Thing, New Jack City, and John Singleton's 1991 magnum opus, Boys in the Hood, the film that earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Director, which marked the first time a Black person was nominated in this category. While not uncommon in the 70s or the 80s, the popularity of movies about the Black experience, specifically wherein life in the projects or inner city is highlighted above all, skyrocketed in the 1990s. It was in these movies that high school life centering Black and Latino teenagers existed, but when people talk about the significance of the teen movie or the culture of high school films, they are rarely, if ever, referring to films like Juice, Menace to Society, or Above the Rim. They are usually referring to the Varsity Blueses, the Cluelesses, the American Pies, or the Never Been Kissed. Why did I phrase it like that? These were the high school movies where things didn't have to be super dramatic and dark, where the challenges students faced had more to do with fitting in, gaining popularity, or any of the rites of passages American teenagers indulge in. This was a segregation of the teen movie in the 90s. I'm not intending to suggest that the gritty drama about white teenagers didn't exist at all, because that's not the case. I mean, this was the decade of fucking Kids. There was also River's Edge, Foxfire, etc., etc. It wasn't that these dramatic, gritty teen movies centering white characters didn't exist. It was that these weren't the only kind of teen movies out there, whereas with Black teenagers and Latino teenagers, these violent struggle movies were the only coming-of-age stories they got, and that is what the teen film was segregated by. Gabrielle Union's presence in the former was more than having Black representation in the teen movie stratosphere. It was that her characters existed in these cinematic universes of escapism. The teen films presented in the mainstream were rooted in escapism that didn't exist in the other teen movie. If Black teenagers wanted to see themselves fall in love on the big screen, it often ended in tragedy. Union's roles in these movies, however small, was an active effort on her part to put Black girls in stories where we were otherwise shut out of. And believe me, the lack of Black women in a lot of these films was completely intentional. In the year 2000, when the film Sugar and Spice, the dark comedy about cheerleaders committing armed robberies, was beginning production, Gabrielle Union recalled wanting to audition for the film, but she was quickly told that the producers didn't want to go ethnic, and she wasn't even allowed to audition. One thing that's significant about Gabrielle Union, amongst the many, is how much thought and care she puts into her characters, whether they're playing a major role or a minor role. Shortly after she found out about Sugar and Spice insisting on not casting anyone who wasn't white for the role, she went out for Bring It On. While she loved the script, there were aspects to Isis's character and to the Clovers overall that she found to be stereotypical and flawed. But instead of passing up on the role entirely, she decided to do it and chose to make it better, to make it good. How would you characterize Isis as originally written? She was like a bad stereotype. There was a line in the original script that was like, "Meow, me gonna owl you. My nails are long, sharp, and ready to slash." Huh? And that girl ends up at UC Berkeley? How did girls from Compton talk in their minds? How about we make her a very clear leader, where her path to cheer justice is done with more class and dignity, but also justifiable anger. She doesn't need to speak in made-up blaxploitation dialogue. She fixed this character and the Clovers and made it less of what sounds like could have easily become a white savior narrative. And still, 21 years since the film's release, Miss Union is thinking about ways she could have made that iconic role that she breathed such life into even better. On September 14th, Gabrielle Union spoke about Bring It On and said she regrets how she portrayed the character, that she wished she had allowed Isis to express her anger to be human.
Because you do write a letter, essentially, to your character,
Yes.
almost apologizing for what you felt the character at the time needed to be, but you think it was a mistake.
I do think it was a mistake. I was given full range to do whatever I wanted with Isis and Bring It On, and I chose respectability. And to be classy and take the high road, because I felt like that would make her the appropriate, the right kind of black girl. Black girls aren't allowed to be angry, certainly not, demonstratively angry. And I muzzled her. And, so last summer, it was the 20th anniversary of Bring It On, and we were doing all these panels with, Kirsten Dunst and Peyton Reed, our director and our writer. And we were talking about a sequel, and we're all like, we should do a sequel, but this time it should focus on, the Clovers and Isis, and should be written by a black person. And I realized that I need to come to grips and acknowledge where I failed Isis. When given full control, I made her appropriate.
The many stereotypes against black women impacts us in various ways. One of those ways is that sometimes we become afraid of expressing anger even when our anger is justified, because we're afraid of being perceived as the angry black woman and nothing more. But then by being afraid to express our anger, we can deny ourselves our own humanity. And the fact that Gabrielle Union not only thinks so deeply about her characters, but about how she's depicting black women and our humanity just... oh fuck, I love her so much. Black girls in teen media, and media in general, have been erased, and not just in the 90s. Look at Elite or Riverdale, which despite having talented people to implement into storylines, underuses its black characters. It's obvious looking at a lot of media throughout the years and today that people envision a world without black women. And if you've been paying attention to anything for the past dozen lifetimes, you know that when movies do picture a world with black women, the black women they envision all look a certain way. Historically, most of the black women in films, TV, or even music have often been light-skinned, and they have all benefited from light privilege. For some, their global reach and acclaim is influenced by their complexion, with people accepting them because they are black, but not too black. The segregation we see in movies, and particularly in my example of teen movies, is not just informed by racism, but by colorism as well. If there is a black woman movie studios deign to be worthy of an in-depth characterization, or of having a love interest or expressing vulnerability, she's not usually dark-skinned. Even the black teen movies that do exist, as sparse as they are, reserve a lot of the roles for female love interests to light-skinned actresses. Cynthia Davis in Cooley High, Zoe Kravitz in Dope, Jada Pinkett in Menace to Society. The harmfulness of the strong black women stereotypes easily extends into entertainment, where you'll find that black women, particularly dark-skinned black women, aren't invited into spaces where they can portray any sort of softness.
We live in a town that rewards pretending, and I had been pretending to be fierce and fearless for a very long time.
I have known the joy and pain of friendship. I have served and been served. I have made some good enemies for which I am not a bit sorry. I have loved unselfishly, and I have fondled hatred with the red-hot tongues of hell. That's living. Amen to that. If you look back at the golden age of Hollywood, there are very few black actresses who are allowed to reach the heights of success of their white peers. And those who did tend to share a similar sort of look. Black, absolutely, and black excellence, don't get it twisted. But could seem not too black in the eyes of white audiences. This does not reflect the black existences of these women, all of whom were outspoken on issues of civil rights and often put their careers on the line in order to advance the cause of blackness in media. But it does impact the type of sex symbols they were allowed to be, and therefore the foundation that they were allowed to leave to the black women of the future. In his essay discussing Carmen Jones, writer and shade queen James Baldwin often refers to Dandridge as toffee colored and compares her to the darker actress Pearl Bailey, who stars in the film with her. And by compares, I mean he does what we all do on Black Twitter and address how colorism has obviously stifled a better actress from being in the lead. And the moment one wishes that Pearl Bailey were playing Carmen, one understands that Carmen Jones is controlled by another movie which Hollywood was studiously not making. As I've gone back and watched a lot of black sitcoms from my past, especially Girlfriends, which I gotta write about that on Patreon, I couldn't help but wonder, where is Gabrielle Union? She is in the background of teen films like 10 Things I Hate About You and frequently plays the darker skinned woman who is about to yank your man right out from under you.
Connie Spaulding, Vice President of Marketing and a bona fide hoe.
Or the career-minded taming of the shrew type of woman that needs to be molded into something more humble, successful, career-driven, but oh boy, she cannot find a man or has any children. While no disrespect for the Kerry Washington, when I watch Scandal, I can't help but think about how Gabrielle Union would have absolutely eaten that role alive, but it requires a level of vulnerability that we really don't tend to give to actresses like Union. But maybe that is part of why she isn't the lead in stories like that. She isn't someone who is trying to be in with white people. She doesn't seem like she's interested in playing the minutia of those games. Much like Ava Gardner, Rita Hayworth, and Bette Davis, Union possesses a quality that makes her almost the antithesis of an ingenue. There is always a smirk on her lips, a hidden bit of mischievous in her eye that makes her captivating on screen, but it always makes her seem up to something. That doesn't stop people like Gardner, Davis, or other golden Hollywood femme fatales from reaching amazing heights in their career, but it does hinder black women. Black women are not allowed to occupy that space, especially not darker than a paper bag black women. Don't get me wrong, it is still hard out there for women who are typical of Hollywood beauty standards. However, they get more opportunities to be mediocre. Hi, Editor Princess here. I realize that somebody might bring up the fact that Gabrielle Union is very much, by her own admission, a self-confessed former mean girl. And I just want to state for the record that so have many of the best actresses in the business. Like, women in Hollywood have always been forced to compete with each other, and we make narratives about it. Like, we literally had a whole thing about Feud. You know, BKR has talked about this and about how women are pitted against each other. So I have empathy for Gabrielle Union, and also she has talked about it. She has discussed this herself. So she's not hiding it. She's not keeping it a secret from anybody. She's being vulnerable. We can absolutely understand why someone of her caliber, not to stand too much, would feel antagonistic towards her lighter skinned friends, even if she loves them and she fucks with them, for having opportunities when she is just as qualified for that, but no one will call her. Black women are boxed into their archetype very quickly, and Gabrielle Union got into the baddie category. But that is a category that removes all tenderness and fragility from a black woman, because we are already not expected to be fragile. And when we are being fragile, it is to teach us a lesson about how we haven't been before, because, you know, Tyler Perry, we're too focused on our career and we haven't thought more about Jesus. Not to mention the hyper scrutiny that comes from being a black woman whose relationships are such a part of their identity. I have heard people judge Union for her divorce, for taking back her now husband Dwayne Wade after he had a child with someone else, and for so long not having children. Meanwhile, never considering that Union, being a survivor of sexual assault, might have different standards and expectations of intimacy, or how from being from a blended family herself, she might be happy with having adoptive children, stepchildren, even though she doesn't use those terms. Or more importantly, that a woman's fertility is not anyone else's business and we don't know what's going on in her body and maybe we should just leave her ass alone.
And when you can't do the thing that, you know, stereotypically we're supposed to be able to do just very easily, you just feel defective on top of defective on top of defective. And I just felt like a loser in every way, shape, and form. I felt like I was being rejected by my baby and we hadn't really even started.
Union, to her deep credit, is a complete badass and should be honored as one, especially since she has not been quiet about the bullshit she has faced in her career. From being one of the 2 black women on Friends, both of whom date Ross, which honestly does track.
Just the other day, Chris and I were talking about how I've been married and how I have a son.
Yeah, little Eric.
That's right. Wait, no, Ben.
Sorry, Chandler. I mean, though, I think Chandler's the better pick. I think we should have put a black woman with Chandler.
That dual consciousness, though, is what prepares me to go then do an episode of Friends after being on City of Angels. When they're like, Gabby, do you know what a mark is? Yeah, I'm an actor. Didn't have to audition for this job because I was just on a hit show on CBS. But the man talked to me in sing-song voice for the whole week. But I'd been there. Do buckwheat. We love it when you entertain us. That's when we're most comfortable. Assimilate, disappear, be complacent. Where you're nice and safe.
Also, her standing up against anti-Asian racism and toxic workplace when she was on America's Got Talent to the detriment of her own bag. Something not a lot of people have the integrity to do, let's just be honest about it. During one of her interviews, she explained that Jay Leno made jokes about Asian people eating dogs, deep Negro sigh, and that Simon Cowell smoked even though it was a violation of health protocol and actively made her sick. She also talked about how the series didn't use the contestants' preferred pronouns. We're doing a show that is talking about a global audience and we're not even asking for preferred pronouns. We should never be put in a position where we're guessing, not when we know better, she says. And again, no checks and balances. Everyone is allowed to operate without consequence or accountability, and it sends a message that this kind of thing is not only tolerated, but encouraged. And Jay Leno, by the way, didn't even apologize for this until after COVID and the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes made people actually feel accountable for their anti-Asian language. All of this tells Hollywood something. Gabrielle Union doesn't give a fuck about you. She doesn't care about what you allow her to do. She is not going to allow you to control her. And that is not the kind of energy we allow black women to have, even in black spaces. Plus, with colorism already enforcing a 1 dark person per production series quota, there isn't much room for Union on already black shows. Because you look at an ensemble piece, they'll maybe have 1 or 2 dark-skinned people.
Here's the thing, we're in crisis mode as black actresses, not only in the sheer number of roles that are offered and that are out there, but the quality of the roles. The quality, and therein lies the problem. See, we're in deprivation mode because, listen, me, Alfred, and Felicia, we're in the same category, and we're in the same category. Whereas if you take a Caucasian actress, you have the ones who are the teens, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're all different.
Even while reading the expanded edition of Tom Coon's Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks by Donald Bogle, while many of her contemporaries like Nia Long, Taraji P. Henson, and Megan Good are indexed in the book, she is notably and glaringly absent, which makes no sense because literally Daddy's Little Girls is in the index. So clearly, he is familiar with Gabrielle Union's oeuvre. None of this is to say that Gabrielle Union shouldn't be proud of her career and the amazing looks she has served. She has worked to be an ally in the LGBT community. She has a great sense of dignity. She has been in iconic works. But in my opinion, she has also not been allowed to show off her full potential because we don't have a lot of room for these personalities in Black Hollywood yet. And when we do get room for those personalities and for that talent, it goes to lighter skinned Black women first. That needs to change, and we need to stop being cowards and to put Gabrielle Union in the same kind of roles that we would give talented, sexy, mischievous women. She could absolutely do that caliber of work. And while we're addressing this in just big ol' Hollywood, let's just talk about Black Hollywood as well, because it has its own issues with not allowing multiple dark-skinned women to be in a project and not being inherently competitive.
Bitch. Okay, every girl's got a little bit of hoe in them, but Connie, she's a different kind of hoe.
And the fact that the system loves to rotate just a handful of Black folks at once, we are asking women of color to be trailblazers for others without being able to actually bask in the glow of their own career, without being allowed to be fully comfortable in their own lives, of having to wear multiple hats, direct, write, and not just be an actress. This is such a different kind of video than what I usually do. So you might be asking, why? Why Gabrielle Union? Why this topic? And as Yhara so eloquently put it in the first part of this video, she was part of a moment, a part of a tangible moment of this girl. This woman has something special. That's why she was put in so many movies. She catches your eye. She's inviting. She's charming. She's evocative. Still, there was this inability to allow her to fully go beyond those small moments. Gabrielle Union, like I said before, should absolutely be proud of all the work she has done. But it's also deeply worth acknowledging how, despite being so popular in the cultural nexus, she was still smothered and underserved by an industry that knew she was special. What's more is that ultimately that hasn't changed. We have seen countless Black women, especially darker skinned one, be mistreated, be marginalized, and actively undervalued. All the praise for Nicole Beharie. But where are her leading lady roles post Miss Juneteenth? Kiki Lane was ungodly amazing in If Beale Street Could Talk and carried that movie on her back. But since then, other than being in the ensemble, The Old Guard, and in the ensemble of Coming to America 2, a movie that Black Twitter clearly didn't give a shit about because we don't ever hear about that shit since, what other films have allowed her to be that good again? Especially, and this is not shade, in comparison to a Tessa Thompson. If you look at Tessa Thompson's career, she has the same sort of thing. She's been supporting in popular shows outside of just Black talent. She has definitely been a crossover person, but she's in Marvel, she's been in several prestige films, she's been allowed to have a certain level of vulnerability of being the love interest and not just the other girl or the girl meant to be broken. Why is that? Well, we know why, but it's bullshit.
So earlier this summer, there was a job that I thought, you know, a friend had. Everybody knew that she had that offer. And there was a lowball attempt. And they were like, well, we're gonna move on. She's like, bet, move on. Mm-hmm. And they move on to me, but that's my girl. So I was like, what you turn down? I asked for Moon, Stars, Rainbow over top of that. I have no intentions of doing it. I want her to get her money. Like, it's not my job. Yeah. So I lose nothing. It was never my job to begin with. But I'm gonna make sure she gets paid. And then go down four people.
I love it.
End up paying her more than what she turned down. Because now they're like, but none of us lost a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and that's
if you
what
want
it takes.
someone, the X person, and we're all in this together, I lose nothing by making sure you get your money.
Yeah. Since next year, one of my projects I wanted to talk about was the history of Black actorship. I wanted to take a moment to discuss a Black actress who means a lot to me because in my mind, when I look at Gabrielle Union, it makes me think, when are we gonna allow Black talent to thrive on multiple levels? To not just be perfect trailblazers, but to just walk on a path that has been set. To allow them to just be actors and not have to carry the weight of representation constantly. But I suppose that means that people behind the scenes, Black and white, need to upgrade past paper bag testing. When I watch Grownish, a show that is not good, but I continuously watch because I do want to support that it is a black girl, black, Middle Eastern led show. I want to support it. But I love how they had Ryan Destiny, who so many people compared to Gabrielle Union. And she's been in so many things as like, oh, she's the dark-skinned girl in this series. And that's all she's ever allowed to be in there, to be like, oh, look, we're not colorist. But she's the background girl. The other girl who is a love interest in that show is the background girl. That is the Gabrielle Union block. Because Gabrielle Union should have been leading all of these romantic comedies, not just as the other woman or the deliveress from Eva, but being this lead. And I just think like Eartha Kitt and her are so similar, but they'll never let Gabrielle Union do what they let Eartha Kitt do. And it just makes me sad. We hear these black actresses who have to wait so long to get their flowers. We were so lucky to get Cicely Tyson for as long as we did, but even so, how many big film roles was she allowed to have in her lifetime? We have Viola Davis, but we need more than one. She can't be everyone. She shouldn't be the only dark-skinned black actress in a place. We have to do better, and the reality is that we're not. We talk about Netflix's paper bag testing, but what is actually being done to push behind that? What are they actually doing to contribute to moving the paradigm? Because while we want everyone to eat, and we can root for them and acknowledge that they are still dealing with a lot of issues, when are they actually going to make sure that they're not the only black person in the room, to make sure that they are the lightest skinned black person in the room and that the other black women in the room with them are darker skinned? Because if we're having Gabrielle Union talk about equity and talk about making all of these movements, when are we actually going to have the people who are the most privileged actually make those similar sacrifices and allow their darker skinned sisters to actually start making their coin? It's not fair for those who need to be carried and need to be helped to be the one with the most bricks on their back.